Hi, welcome all. Today we'll discuss a topic called virtual network in Azure. What is virtual network? How we are going to use it? And what are the components of virtual network? We'll discuss each and everything. And before that, we'll understand what is network actually, a physical infrastructure. The, in this diagram, we can understand it very easily. What is physical infrastructure and what is network? If you have a server or a laptop or any other devices, digital devices, they will have their IP addresses. How they are going to assign IP addresses with their network. Basically, network is needed for every device to communicate with internet or to communicate with other devices. In this scenario, we'll cover with the laptop. Consider this as a laptop or a physical server, and it will be attached to a NIC. NIC is nothing but a network interface card, and it is very helpful to virtual machine or any physical server because it will be attached to a subnet. I mean, it will be attached to a network. So it establishes a communication between network and the server. This is a middle point to establish a connection. And after connection, it will be assigned IP addresses for this server. So by using that IP address, we can communicate with other devices and we can also communicate with over the internet. That's how it works in physical infrastructure. And with the cloud, consider this as a cloud, and we have virtual network. That is physical network. This is virtual network, which is in cloud. And we have virtual machine database. In the virtual machine, we have again the network interface card, which will be attached to a subnet of this virtual network. What is subnet? We'll discuss it. This address space will assign a specific IP address for this virtual machine, and another subnet will be there within a same virtual network. It will be attached to a database, and it will be assigning the IP addresses. This network is assigning IP address for this as well, and using these IP addresses, they can communicate with each other, or over the internet. We can communicate. We can establish a connection using the IP addresses. That is cloud infrastructure. Now we'll move with the topic. What is Azure virtual network? It's actually Vnet refers to a logically isolated network infrastructure that you create within the Azure cloud environment. That means it's a network within a cloud and it is isolated. What are the resources within it, like a virtual machine database? They can communicate with each other, but it is blocking communication from the outside world because it is not trusted from the outside. So there is public and private IP. What is public IP? Before that, what is address space? Address space is a range of IP addresses that you define for your VNet. That means it will be having a pool of IP address ranges within which you can assign each and every resource a specific IP address. Because every resource needs to be having their own unique IP address. For example, virtual machine will be having one IP address, storage account will be having another IP address, database will be having another IP address. There should be unique IP address associated with each and every resource. And there are different types of IP address. Public IP, that means if you want to establish a connection outside the network, outside the virtual network, or outside over the internet, publicly, if it is using a public IP address, you can establish a connection publicly. If you need a private connection, you use a private IP where all the resources within the same network can access like this. These two subnets are within this virtual network. That means these are both installed, deployed within this network, so they can communicate with each other with a private IP. If some other resource created outside the virtual network, it cannot communicate with the private IP with this because it is not connected to this virtual network. So dynamic IP, where once you start a virtual machine and if you stop it and again if you restart, it may assign a different IP address the second time because it is if you choose dynamic, it will be changing regularly. If you want to keep it constant, you can use static IP address. Static IP address will be useful when you have a scenario like you have a DNS and you configure IP address to that DNS. Whenever the user want to access the application within a virtual machine, which is hosted, for example, virtual machine can be used for hosting web applications. By user using the DNS, they can access the web application. For that DNS, this IP address will be configured. If you use dynamic IP address there, what will happen? Each and every time you need to configure, the IP address will be changing. So if you use static IP, it will be constant. Once you register, it will be final. And subnets, the components, virtual network components. Subnets is like a part of a virtual network. If it is a huge building, each and every floor we can consider as a subnet. That means it is a part of a whole virtual network. There can be multiple subnets. Each can be assigned to a different resources, as we shown here. One subnet is for virtual machine, one subnet is for database. We can assign n number of subnets to a different resources. That is called segmentation. Segmentation of subnets. And network security groups. It's like a basic set of groups. Rules to filter out the traffic, incoming and outgoing traffic. You can block a specific IP address, or you can assign. You can allow the specific IP address on protocols to enter to visit. To access the data. You can use this network security groups within a virtual network. Control the traffic. Virtual network gateways enable secure connectivity between Azure virtual networks, express routes, and on-premise networks. That means it will establish a secure connectivity to your other networks. For example, on-premise, that means Office network and Azure network, they can communicate using VPN gateways. If you have a private IP, you cannot communicate with outside the network, right? If you want to communicate outside the network, you don't have a public IP, then you need to configure VPN gateways. And VPN gateways will establish a secure connection over the public internet. And express route is another kind of private connection where it is not using the public internet. It creates its own dedicated network line where it is more secure and more fast when compared to VPN gateways. And also the cost, it will be consuming more cost when you compare with a VPN because it is a private network, secure and more fast. This is the subnet. We already discussed which subdivisions of Vnet and network security groups. It's the rules that control inbound outbound traffic. For example, VMs, anything. It's a basic firewall. And how does it all fit together? Imagine you are sitting in a new office building. Virtual network is like a building itself, and subnets consider as each and every individual floors of the building, each dedicated to a different departments. As in virtual network, consider this as a whole building and subnets as each floors. Subnet one is one floor, subnet two is other floor, which is dedicated to different resources. And network security groups or security checks at each floor entrance. That means the people who are living in this floor, they cannot go to this home without the authorization. Checkpoints. You can control that using network security groups. And VPN connections express route or like a special security entryways. For example, if they are living outside this building, the people can visit these people's house with the authorization, secure connection. That means these people will tell the watchman or security checkpoints to let them in so they can they can come into their home. You can consider VPN gateway express route as like that. I hope you understood. I hope you understood the topic very well. And that's it for this session. Thank you.